All right, folks, it's time to start off with World Edition. Starting off a little bit late, but that's all right. We've got a lot of things going on in the world, including a second shooting in Minneapolis. So we'll be talking about that. I've got Rick Rosner with me, and I think I've also got Dr. Sharif. At least he was here earlier. We'll see if he makes a return trip and all along those lines. But there's a lot going on in the world. So I'm going to bring Rick in, and we'll talk about what's going on in the world, including the second shooting in Minneapolis. I understand it was a nurse that was killed, and this time.
37-year-old nurse Alex Preddy. He worked with veterans at the
Right.
VA.
I
He
understand that.
well,
Oh,
he was on the street direct with a his cell phone camera, and he had a gun tucked into either a holster or the back of his pants. Uh, he was helping direct traffic and just observing. A lot of people are observing ICE there.
right.
And depending on whether you're a lib or a conservative, you're calling them observers, or you're calling them protesters, or you're calling them rioters. So they're not really rioting. So on the sidewalk, ICE or Border Patrol pushed over a woman. He walked over to help her up, and then ICE started hassling him, pushed him down. They pulled the gun away from him. And then 3 or 4 seconds later, they shot him about 10 times, including 3 times in the back.
Wow. And I understand he had a license to carry and
Yeah.
all along those lines. So he was definitely involved in the VA, and apparently he had a
Yeah. So,
license to carry.
so Minnesota is an open carry state. If you have a license, you can walk around with a short gun. Now, the law is, I'm not sure about, there are now citizens walking around Minneapolis with long guns, rifles. And I'm seeing discussion about this on Twitter. I don't know whether that's allowed or not, but a short gun, a pistol, if you're licensed, you can walk around with it. So this is causing cognitive dissonance in a lot of people who support, who are conservative, because on the one hand, you support the right of the government to take
Right.
down this guy. On the other hand, this guy didn't do anything wrong, and he has a Second Amendment right to carry a gun.
And they're very big on the Second Amendment. A lot of the people on the right are, and everything along those lines. I also understand that.
Oh, but
Uh,
also on the left, hold on the left, you have a zillion people, including myself, who suddenly are very strong supporters of the Second Amendment.
Right, because you're thinking about carrying a gun, and I understand that we might be heading for another government shutdown. Even though I was watching News Nation, and there was a young lady that is one of the uh, representatives from Maine, because Maine is now being targeted as well, and she was saying that if Homeland Security and their funding is taken off, that they might get a lot of things passed in this new amendment and everything like that, and that may be a way to avert the shutdown. But it does look like there is a shutdown threat that is looming as Democrats are pledging to block some of the funding, but a lot of it might be around Homeland Security and the funding that they are getting.
So they have until Friday to pass a bill, or the government, you get a partial shutdown. Various plans are being tossed back and forth between the Republicans and the Democrats. So ICE funding went from less than $10 billion a year in previous years to 85 billion this past year. And uh, Democrats are saying no more, that they're being run incompetently. They're not being held responsible for any of their mistakes. There's been a standoff, a showdown between state investigators of this latest shooting and DHS, Department of Homeland Security, over who gets the evidence in the case.
Mm-hmm.
And they took all the evidence, DHS and the FBI, in the Renee Good shooting, and tried to shut down any kind of investigation by Minnesota. And
Right.
Minnesota is saying that's not going to happen this time because they didn't even investigate her shooting.
Right.
But anyway, yeah, there are a bunch of plans about how to get a budget passed with various levels, including no more money for ICE.
Now, some of the conservatives are trying to paint all the things that are going on as massive amounts of agitators and all along those lines. I know that Lance has said that. And like I said, I was watching News Nation yesterday, and Byron Donaldson, who is definitely a very conservative gentleman and is running for governor of Florida, he was trying to make it seem like it was a bunch of instigators that were instigating the attack, and that there was not really anything to these shootings, even though there have been 2 fatalities. But he was definitely very much pro-Trump and was thinking that there was a lot of agitators. So, what is your answer to people like Brian Donaldson?
Yeah, well, I mean that's garbage. The idea that these people are getting paid to protest is just Fox News BS.
Right.
A couple things. ICE protesters trashed a hotel in Minneapolis last night, where ICE is supposed to be staying. They broke some windows. They spray painted the hotel. They trashed some cars outside the hotel. Trump is sending Tom Homan, you know, that guy who looks like a boiled potato, who looks like every evil white guy ever in a movie, like in the 1980s cops movies,
Yeah.
the first, like Mel Gibson, Danny Glover, like fight the henchman, and the henchman might be multi-ethnic, but always the guy at the top is this evil ass white, businessman. Tom Homan looks like that every 80s, big boss. And he's being sent to Minneapolis to straighten things out.
It's interesting you mentioned Tom Homan, because that's one of the things that was mentioned on News Nation, was that there's apparently a divide as to how to handle the those folks that are coming in illegally or illegally and everything, and it's in Homeland Security and in some of the Trump administration. So apparently there is a divide between, say, the Kristi Noems and the Tom Homans and some of the other people in the cabinet and everything, because they even read a letter from one of the supporters of Trump, but they were basically saying go after the real bad hombres and not necessarily go after the cooks and the chefs and everything like that. So
right, 73% of the people picked up by ICE have no criminal charges, don't have a criminal record. They might be here, illegally, but that is a misdemeanor. It's not and they're here to, like you said, to be your cook, to be your frickin' in LA, your gardener, your nanny, and other stuff. You don't have to be. I'm sure there are, out of the millions of undocumented, there are people who aren't just doing like a blue collar. I bet you there, anyway, and there are 49 other states, and a lot of people are saying, get out of Minneapolis, get out of Minnesota.
That's one of the things that the senator, I wish I could think of her name, or the congresswoman from, if you look up the one from Maine, it wasn't Collins, it was one of the other ones. But that's one of the things that she was saying, older woman and everything like that. But she was saying that Maine is the whitest state of them all. I think she actually used that quotation. She said, "We're the whitest state of all. Why are you coming after us?" and everything like that. Because I think that it is one of the whitest states that exists.
Also, somebody pointed out that, Minnesota is a border state, but it's a northern border state. And Minneapolis is 300 miles from the border.
Right.
And Border Patrol agents were among the shooters of this Alex Preddy. And why do you have Border Patrol supposed to operate within 50 miles of the border? What are they doing 300 miles south of the border?
And nobody knows that, and they're people trying to figure that out. By the way, it seems like there are divides in other parts of the world as well, because apparently this person, Suella Braverman, has defected to the Reform Party. So she was an ex-Tory Home Secretary, and she's now defected to Reform UK. So Labour says Farage is stuffing his party full of failed Tories after Suella Braverman.
Now, wait, did she flip? All right, so while you're frozen, I'm going to mention one more thing. Trump is deporting 2 Iranian gay guys back to Iran, which is bad because they don't love gays in Iran. Iran has just gotten done, or I don't think they're even done, with killing between 10,000 and 35,000 of its own people. for protesting against the government. And we're going to send gay guys back to Iran where, you know, they have no compunction about killing people they don't like. So that seems bad. Oh, you're muted now. Anyway, muted, froze. All right, let's see what else we got here. Oh, it's freaking cold every place. 2/3 of America is, I don't know, below freezing. Let's see. Let's pull the map up. This article says that more than half of America is covered with snow.
Yeah, we're part of that because I know here in Durham, and I see I'm unmuted now, but yeah, we don't have a lot of snow. I think it was like maybe less than an inch or an inch and everything. But I know New York got slammed. For one of my coworkers is stranded temporarily in Connecticut, and I was watching the news, and there was a young lady that had been, a couple of young ladies, I think, that had been stranded for 2 or 3 days because some people are practically living in the airport because that's how bad the weather is and everything. And I don't know how much you heard before, but I was just saying it looks like this notion of defection is in other parts as well. So ex-Tory Home Secretary Sola Braverman has defected to Reform UK, and Labour is saying that Farage is stuffing his party full of failed Tories. So it looks like there's a whole group of Tories that are defecting to the Reform Party. So this notion.
So if you're not from the UK and you don't know what some of these names mean, the Tories are the Conservatives.
Right.
Labour is the Liberals.
Right.
Reform is nutty Conservatives. I don't know exactly. Like Farage is like a conservative jackass, kind of like a MAGA, I think.
I think he's MAGA.
But yeah, I don't know exactly what's going on over there.
Yeah, I know your daughter's over there, or at least I think she's still over there with her husband and everything. Apparently, it looks like a ferry carrying over 350 people sank in the Philippines, killing at least 15. So our sympathies go out to them. But this was a ferry disaster, so we don't hear that much about the Philippines. But that's what was going on in the Philippines. And a Russian strike on Ukraine's Kyiv. And I think that they'll be back tomorrow, Sasha and Ivan and the rest of the gang, including Jonathan. But they said that it left 1,330 buildings still without heat. So, like you said, sometimes it's because of war, sometimes it's because of cold weather and everything. And apparently, the Chinese are investigating their military. So, a Chinese top general is accused of giving nuclear secrets to the U.S. So, apparently, there's a X's purge of top generals is spurring questions on Taiwan and succession. So nobody is safe. China Xi is targeting his closest allies in a purge over there. So it looks like there's a thing going on there. And I think that, there's still that whole thing around Greenland. And apparently we're having some tension with our European nations. And I know that I don't think Trump's a big fan of wind, but the European nations are reinforcing their wind power commitment with a 100 GW pledge and everything like that.
So Trump said we never needed help from NATO nations, and today on MS or whatever they call it. Anyway, they had General Mark Hartling on listing all the people from all these EU countries, all these NATO countries who died helping the U.S. Take down the Taliban in Afghanistan. And that includes 450 something Brits, dozens of people from Denmark. Every NATO country suffered deaths and injuries in Afghanistan.
No, in Afghanistan and the various wars that we fought and everything like that. But it looks like, particularly the world wars and everything, but it looks like some of our allies are now teaming up, because it says, one of the articles that I saw said that EU and India are exploring defense cooperation, as that's what a draft document released earlier today said. And India will be slashing tariff on cars to 40% in a trade deal with EU. So there might be a lot of cars coming from the European theater to India and everything like that. So it looks like there's going to be a long pending free trade agreement according to what India and the EU are doing. I heard an interesting parallel. It was a guy when I was watching News Nation. It was a historian, a famous historian. I think he's like 90 something years old and something like that. But he was talking about, he made the comparison of the original 13 colonies, because, we're celebrating 250th anniversary, to the EU. So he said, if you want to think about what the original colonies were, just think of the EU and everything like that, because probably 13 countries that are unified in a similar amount of distance to what the original 13 colonies were on the East Coast and everything like that.
That makes sense. And we never properly healed from the divisions from among our various states, because they punted slavery in 1789 when they wrote the Constitution. They had the problem of what to do about slavery, and we're like, well, we'll kick it down the road. And then it took another 70 years for it to become, an insurmountable issue. And then Lincoln gets assassinated. If he'd stayed president, would Reconstruction have been less shitty? And would states have been fixed and reconciled? Because we're still fighting the Civil War 160 years later.
We're still fighting it. Martin Luther King was fighting it almost 60 years ago and everything like that. So it's been an ongoing war. And this historian did bring that up, because he said that the North was actually one of the first, and the original 13 colonies were one of the first countries in the world to actually tackle the issue of slavery, but it was mostly the northern countries, and they tried to pass it down to the southern ones, which is, of course, what led to the Civil War and everything like that. So, it is an issue that has been around for a while.
I want to go back to nuclear secrets, which nuclear secrets always strike me as kind of weird, because, we are 80 years past the first atomic bomb, and the secret of nuclear weapons is there aren't really any secrets. I mean, there are secrets about where they're placed and how big they are, but the technology is crazy simple. You get enough of the explodey type of uranium, you spin it out until you get the lighter uranium, which is easier to explode. If you put enough of that together in a lump, it explodes. And so a uranium bomb is, you just take two pieces of uranium and you go boom, and you push them together, and within 1,000th of a second it detonates, and you've got a huge explosion. With plutonium, you take a sphere of plutonium and you smush it down with explosives placed around the outside, and the plutonium within 1,000th of a second blows up. You've got a huge explosion. Those are the secrets. That's it. It's simple technology, and people got executed for sharing this. The Rosenbergs in the 1950s, they stole some of the U.S. nuke secrets, and the U.S. executed them for sharing those secrets with Russia. But the secrets are dumb and simple.
Yeah, secrets are dumb and simple. We've got Kim with us. We've got Dr. Sharif with us. I did have a question about these bans, and I didn't know if you had any thoughts about it, but we know that Australia, where our buddy Shaquille sometimes comes from, has got their social media ban, but now France is debating a ban for those under 15, and they're thinking about having a social media ban for the under 15s and fast tracking that. So what is our thoughts? Because Macron says children's brains are not for sale, and he's urging a fast track to ban social media for kids under 15. And I know you don't have any kids that age. Your kids are
right. So smartphones. The first smartphone hits the world in like 2007. Now we have as many smartphones in the world as we have people, and people have not gotten less crazy since 2007. And you could argue, that the constant feed of bullshit off your phone makes people crazy. We're in the middle of an experiment in driving Americans crazy via targeted propaganda. And sure, like as crazy and dumb as adults are, kids are even dumber. So you should maybe put some limits on
it. Kim, in that field?
I agree with Rick in that, but I will say this: you can ban them all they want, and kids will find a way. They are the mini us, okay? They are you. And we built it, but I'm going to tell you right now, they can hack it. I've watched kids whose parents didn't even know they had phones back in the day and they're like, oh, you can't do this and you can't do that. And those kids were the first on the dang Facebook. And so you can't stop and you don't want to, okay? You don't want to stop it. And let me tell you why. You want to educate them on how to use it,
Right.
okay? Be more involved, participate in the use of, but you're not going to stop them, and they're going to use it anyway, and it's going to be a mess. It's going to be reckless.
So I agree with you. Where, and then we'll go to Dr. Sharif. But I think you get rid of the foreign language requirement in middle school and high school. That's wasted time. Everybody's got our phones translate for us, and in that hole, those extra hours in class, you replace it with tech literacy, economic literacy, civic literacy classes, how to understand and not be made crazy by propaganda. There's plenty of you redo the high school curriculum to reflect current reality.
Exactly.
You got to do that. There's no doubt. Dr. Sharif, what you got to say about all of this?
Yeah, a very good point. Actually, my talent economy, we work with youth. And in South Asia, we have a lot of youth. And Bangladesh also, we have around 57% youth. So 1.5 billion people, 57% youth. You can think how many young generations you have. In Bangladesh, some politicians, they go for argument with me. They say that social media actually not helping at all. Social media actually not creating or adding any values for them. By this way, the youth are not more intellectual what we see in 1990s. So I said, okay, I agree with you. All of the point I agree, but in our summit, I want to discuss head to head with all of the youth. So around 3,000 young people come. So in my speech, I request the politicians and I request the youth. I said that how many of you use Facebook? And you have to understand it's a grassroots level. Let's say Rajbari, very small village, grassroots level peoples. They never visit USA. They never visit even India. They do not visit in Europe and other places. So I asked them, how many of you use social media like Facebook? Everybody hands up. They say, hey, I use social media. I said, you see, we are doing World Talent Economic Forum and Talent Economy, and this is our POT TV. This is our talent economy. We run our shows like Intellectual. Do you like it? Everybody say, yes, we like it. I said, how many of you know Silicon Valley? Everybody hands up. They know Silicon Valley. And I ask more and more questions, even some intellectual questions about OpenAI, about Stanford, what's going on. So then the politician said, I agree, I do not know much about like the youth knows. Youth have much more knowledge about Silicon Valley, about social media, about how to use it, what Kimberly said, about all of the things. And then they agree, no, social media is required. It gives connectivity and it gives a lot of new knowledge. We do not teach them in the classroom. We do not teach them in the schools or university, even college, but they learn through their own enthusiasm and positive things. So that is one of the positive things about talent economy. Just through this program, I always share this program in between my network. So Bangladesh, Pakistan, India, many audience may watch this show. Even Pakistan has very good school, Rehan Allahwala school. All of the youth, young people, they took, develop this podcast and everything. So I request, like, give them chance, trust them, trust the young people, trust the youth. They have a lot of potentiality. Social media and technology is something by this way they can grow their knowledge, they can grow their expertise, they can understand the Western world. This is not bad if we understand USA, because there are a lot of good people we have in USA, a lot of intellectual we have in USA, a lot of good things happening in Silicon Valley. And through this process, the youth people can learn many things. Also through the program, I request all of the politicians, you do not have to go for all of the mega projects. Better you go for give them laptop, internet, free internet. Maybe they can learn from Rick Rosner, right? give them laptop and internet free. So I request all of the South Asian countries give access to the internet, laptop and social media. Students will learn by themselves. They can grow with the network, and they can run from Kimberly, from Markley, from Rick Ruffner, all of the brilliant people. Like, this is the talent economy ecosystem. Thank you.
Appreciate it and everything.
And Dr. Sharif, we can learn from you too. So
I don't know. I'm full of I'm like
No,
half
you're not full of
sawdust.
garbage. I did have a question for Kim and everything because I know she's big into tech and technology, and even the internet, having been involved in the creation of some of the things that are very important to our internet trade and all along those lines. But what do you think of a lot of people using the internet as a form of not a form of protest, but a form of security? Because as Rick mentioned earlier, there were a number of people that documented the shooting of this gentleman in Minneapolis because they had their camera phones, and a lot of people got their camera phones at these various protests, whether it was George Floyd or whether it was even as far back as Rodney King and a number of others as well. I just wanted your thoughts around people that are having the phone cameras, not the body cameras.
It's good you mentioned Rodney King. Rodney King was one of the first instances of cops being held to account because somebody on a home video camera from their balcony caught the cops kicking the shit out of Rodney King. Rodney King took the cops on a chase. When they finally caught up with him, they were pissed off, and they did what pissed off cops sometimes do. They pulled him out of his car and they kicked the crap out of him, but they were caught on video. And that led to eventually riots across LA. And but that was what, 35 years ago, maybe? Yeah. And
yeah, but I think that we're weaponizing our phones, and I always say, a pen is far stronger than a sword. But I'd also got this Alex Prezi, he got him killed.
Yeah.
Because they are now yanking the phones out of people's hands and destroying them. So I would say if you're going to videotape, be in a large group, but also if you're alone, videotape. Get dash cams for your car. But also they have hidden cameras that you can get that no one can see. Just make sure that they're always like a visual of some kind, clip them on your glasses so that people are seeing what you're seeing, or clip them on your lapel. Just make sure you don't have hair in the way.
Well, there are also glasses with video cameras.
That's exactly what I'm saying. Or you can buy the glasses. They have really nice earbuds now that clip, that also have a camera, but again, just make sure your hair is not in the way. A lot of people, you have good intentions of doing all of these things, but practice with it before you take it out and use it. Just don't use it. But I, have two phones on you at all times. The other thing I want to do is, if I can get enough money together, is develop an app that is on your phone, and the minute that you're detained, because they're going to take your phone and everything, but you hit a button. If you're in a situation, that button automatically puts you, without you doing anything else, it notifies a sector that we design that goes to attorneys, that tracks where your phone is going, because those agents are taking the phone unless, they get smart enough to say, toss the phone out where they found it. But
so you're gonna give civilians what police already have, because I've watched enough shows like FBI and SWAT to know that they can detect a lot of your phones and stuff like that. So this sounds good to have this ability for regular people as well, because like I said,
so just have two phones instead of one. That's what I prefer. 3 if you can, because we all replace our phones all the time. I replace my phone over and over with the same phone. I just like to renew it, get new SIMs and stuff like that. But there's nothing wrong with keeping an older phone. Most everywhere you go is connected to Wi-Fi, but even if it's not, you can connect it to your phone or buy another service that's pretty cheap nowadays. But that, these things do cost money. But if you're using one as a camera, right, and they take that one from you, you have the other one in your pocket. and you hit the button. The panic button is what, we can call it. But you hit the panic button, and then that immediately puts you in to a vault somewhere that somebody's watching you. And we just need to raise money to build this system. But I think it would be good because we can get attorneys on retainer that will immediately go and help these people. I think that we're either going to have to go to DC and put an end to this, 1 million people, or we're just going to have to get smarter with the way we are protecting ourselves. I'm not going to call it resistance. We have to protect ourselves.
So
That's how we
Iran,
protect
which has
ourselves.
been killing tens of thousands of its own people, has shut down the internet for the past 2 weeks.
Yeah, they shut down the internet.
And that includes phone service.
Mhm.
And
Yeah,
that-
if you can, but you can do that. That can be done, and I would not doubt Trump to do that. We are more federally controlled because I used to own a phone company. Can it be done? Yeah, but there are too many small phone companies in the United States that he would have to gain control of all of them. Do we have a core central system there? I'm not going to release that information, but we have too many independent telephone companies. We also have, people who have their independent radio towers. So fire them up, baby. Fire up your independent radio towers. I have one. I have a Wi-Fi tower that can be converted to a radio tower. That's what I might go do. But start firing up our radio towers, be prepared. That's all I got to say.
It sounds like Red Dawn, that movie with Patrick Swayze, where
it does sound like Red Dawn and everything like that. It just really quickly, Kim, because I know it's a passionate
Fried
issue
green
to you.
tomatoes. Go watch that. That's what we need to become.
Yeah, that's a great movie. But a quick question for you, Kim, because I know it's a passionate issue to you, but apparently in Maryland, there's a bill before the Maryland General Assembly that would allow judges to consider the tolls of domestic abuse as someone's history as the victim of domestic abuse when sentencing folks. So apparently this has been the case where some people have been the victims of domestic abuse, and then they were, they might have shot or killed somebody. So they're saying that they have to look at that when sentencing, because they might sentence them, I guess, to lesser sentences if they had gone through that. So I just wanted your take on this, because this is a new bill that just came out recently today, and it was in the Washington Post that it was reported.
So I think that if somebody has a restraining order against someone and they had to use excessive force to protect themselves, and that excessive force led to killing the other person, then I think that there shouldn't even be an arrest. If the victim is somewhere and the perpetrator is there stalking them, and then that's valid reason to shoot and kill someone. We recently had a situation where the woman didn't even know the man, but apparently, the man was, I don't know if he was talking to her. I never got the full story, but this was very interesting to me. In North Carolina, your car is your castle. So castle doctrine carries to your car. So if you shoot someone protecting yourself in your car from a masked man beating the window down, you're supposedly protected from being arrested. And this happened to a woman in a parking lot just down the street from me a little over a year ago, where a man was beating in her window, and she shot him just right through the windshield and everything, just shot and killed him. And they did not arrest her. Fortunately for her, she didn't have her camera going because she was scared. She was defending herself, which is what happens to most victims. Our laws are pretty stupid when it comes to domestic violence. When you call 911 and you say, help, I'm a victim of domestic violence, that's a lot to say to begin with. They want you to pull your court order out of your purse or off of your person and read to them your court order to tell them that you're legit before they even dispatch anyone. And usually you're running for your life or hiding. You don't want to talk much. There's, if that again deserves a panic button that has your ID on it. But they want you to do all of that. And this is what I tell victims. And I talked to an EMT about this the other day. I said, I'm sorry I do this, but I tell my victims to call and say, I'm having a heart attack. They
Well,
will dispatch fire department, EMTs, and police.
Yeah,
Right.
in California, just about every week you see some woman killed who had a restraining order. A restraining order, it doesn't offer that much protection.
It doesn't offer protection. It just offers proof if you kill the perpetrator back, and that usually doesn't happen. There are 12 million female victims a year, every year in America, and the recidivism of the crime is 100%. There has been no means of reforming any of the perpetrators in this crime. And what happens is if you arrest them, the victims are scared when you arrest them, and they're supposed to notify the victim when they release them. And that is a law, but they don't do it. Well, then what happens is when they are arrested, that's like pouring gas on the fire. And it becomes, and Nick knows my stats are 100% dead on, and he could quote them at one time. I think he still can. But, and I've taken them to DC because we need these laws improved. But the 80, it used to be 89%, but I was told that I was wrong. It's higher. But 89% of the time that a perpetrator is released from prison, he will repeat the crime worse and within 24 hours of being
Plus,
released.
it takes for a lot of people. There are a few million guy victims of it. It takes a while to admit that you are
6 million.
It takes to admit that you're in an abusive situation.
Yeah.
And cops are said to hate domestic calls more than anything else,
right,
because
Most dangerous.
you show up to try to break up an abusive situation, and you often have both sides yelling at you. You try to take the guy away, and the woman hasn't reached that point yet, and she may try to shut you down. It's a mess. And
domestic violence is the most dangerous crime that officers are dispatched for, and that's why I invented a product for them to use, or a tool for their tool belt. And we tested it from Conover, North Carolina, and Raleigh, North Carolina, all the way to DC for a Smart Cities project to get funding for it. And it was a tracking device that I developed back I invented in 2012, long before any of the tracking devices existed. And maybe they were being developed in labs, but I got the patent for it and everything. But nobody wants to invest money in preventive, and this would have prevented it. And the police even stood up and spoke about it because they used it, they tested it.
So you put the tracking device on the abuser, and
both. You put it on both, and everyone said a victim won't want to wear it. But what it does is it determines where each one is, and alerts are sent when the thresholds are crossed. So if they get close to the victim, the police are notified. But in many cases, you live in the same city, so we adjusted the thresholds. We had 3-tier thresholds, and so there's a warning. And that sends the victim a warning to get away. And then they're getting closer, and that sends a notice to the police department. And then there's they're there, within 100 feet, within the protective order. What it was designed to do was input the details of the protective order. So if it was for certain addresses, schools, workplaces, home, cars, we could put them on cars and vehicles, because cars were always a place of attack. So, yeah, so it's existed for a long time. The technology works. We've used it.
What do you think about the nature of it helping with sentences? Because I think what this law in Maryland is supposed to be saying is that because it doesn't just impact those that are going against those that they were that had imposed the threat on them, but sometimes it causes people to get into other criminal activity. So that's what I think this law is saying, is that they can look at the impact of domestic abuse on maybe the reason that they became larcenists or robbers and things like that, or that they got involved in other crimes, because sometimes they might be trying to do things for survival.
The goal was to reduce recidivism. That's all it was supposed to do, was to help reform. So, but yeah, Rick, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I want to talk about tracking technology. 50 years ago, when I was a kid, both libs and conservatives had issues with any kind of universal ID and any kind of tracking stuff. Now, libs, didn't like it because of civil liberties issues. And conservatives didn't like it because in the Bible, it talks about the number of the beast. That in the book of Revelation, that one of the things that the beast does is he marks everybody so he can keep track of everybody. And so conservatives used to think that this kind of ID and tracking stuff was satanic and dictatorial. Well, both sides. But now, 50 years later, we all walk around. We happily have tracking devices in our hands.
Let me put it to you this way: because of the FCC laws, the government actually can access any ID and where you're located.
And we know that our phones listen to us. I mean, it's a cliche now that you talk about something and 5 news articles, come up on your phone because your phone is surveilling you. And we laugh at it, but we're mostly okay with it. So what you're talking about, this tracking tech for abuse situations, seems perfectly reasonable. Since we've already given up that privacy, it might as well have a positive, be a benefit to us.
Yeah, one of the things I did when I would pitch it, the minute, especially men, I don't like that. That is a horrible thing. It's going to take away rights. And I look at them and I immediately peg that they're an abuser. Like right off the bat, my mind goes, he's an abuser. And I go, no, it doesn't prove you guilty. It will prove you innocent. Right. If you are arrested and there is questionable doubt whether you're guilty or not, you wear it and you don't ever cross those thresholds, it proves your innocence. Or if she is hurt, it proves your innocence. So I can't count the men who poo-pooed it. And immediately my brain goes, red flag, red flag, red flag. Because if you don't want to prove your innocence, then what you're trying to do is, protect your guilt.
There's this same thing with body cams on cops, where a lot of cops don't love body cams. But somebody made the point yesterday on Twitter that body cams have saved a number of good cops by proving that they didn't do anything wrong.
I've yet to see, and I was there when the first body cams popped out at one of the conferences for police officers and everything, because I used to go and speak on cybersecurity as well. And I met one of the guys. He was a young kid who helped put together some of the first affordable body cams by reusing old cell phones. But yeah, it has proved a lot of innocence. And I will tell you this, majority of the police force supported it. Majority of the police force will support any tool that will prove their innocence, but also lessen their tool belt. And that's what. If you're part of a police force where, there are a lot of your fellow cops are a-holes, and you don't want to be an a-hole, but you can't say too much because then you'll get shunned by the other. If everybody's wearing a body cam, then you can just go, hey, we're on camera, which is a great excuse to not do bad. Right. I mean, it's like I say, it makes people think twice. It may not prevent a crime, but wearing a tracking device, if you've been arrested and have a court order, it just makes you think twice about it. Now, can you get out of it? Many of them you could. We designed the tracking device so that it detected your DNA. Because a lot of technology was getting better when we started presenting this.
Well, but about thinking twice and everything
you
along those lines.
You got to be able to make it where people just can't remove it.
We also surveil ourselves in our own homes. People who have Ring camera setups are watching themselves in addition to watching everybody else.
And the Ring camera, you're watching yourself, and you got the Alexis or whichever other one you got that's listening to your conversation. So yeah, we're listening to ourselves all the time and everything like that. But Kim, you've got a series that you're starting and everything along those lines. So tell us about this series, or is this going to be a regular show? And tell us about this.
I don't know. I just want to get the word out there that there were unredacted court records of Epstein before Trump got a hold of them. We actually were looking at them. I, came across them by accident when I was doing a background check on someone who happened to be associated with Epstein, but they were just court records. And so people need to understand, because everyone goes, well, why did you have them and nobody else? They're not easy to find. Okay. And I just happened to be doing a background check on someone and the court records popped up and I go, this is interesting. But they're not easy to find. But there are, and I heard somebody mention this, there are probably 3 variations of the DOJ Epstein files. But even in the court files that I was investigating and looking at and just collecting data for myself and making a timeline of it because it was so confusing, it exposed a lot more going on because I went to look at archive stories and compare things. There was some redaction on these files, so I had to work hard to find out who they were, but there weren't a lot. It was mostly these redactions were to protect the victims, except one person, Elon Musk. His files, when he was subpoenaed by courts in 2023, his files were completely sealed when he responded. And I have asked several attorneys, who gets that right? Who gets a right to have their responses to court deposition questions completely sealed? And majority of them say people who have settled out or paid money, right? But courts aren't supposed to be bought out. So out of all of the records and depositions, they in the cases that we had depositioned Epstein's and Jean-Luc Brunel, who was a partner with Epstein, questioned their bookkeepers, questioned the banks, questioned JP Morgan, douchebag, all of them, all of the execs that turned their head the other way. There were so many people who knew that this was going on, didn't participate in the crime itself, but just continued to let it happen because they transacted trillions of dollars a year. And all of their transactions, and this is what I tell people, I figured it out. The secret was they all had to incorporate nonprofit and charities to operate behind. It made them look good. It was less investigated, but it was also tax-free. And one of the things that caught my attention that I found most interesting, 2004 to 2008, there's a lot of activity. 2010 to 2013, you'll see a lot of interesting activity of, who you could piece together that was involved. But after Epstein died, his estates received $120 million tax refund.
Well,
they shouldn't have received anything from this kind of activity. Not for this kind of activity. So
the FBI says that more than 1,000 girls and young women were involved in this abuse, sex trafficking, coercion scheme. And that this went on, like Epstein kept getting caught and kept buying his way out of serious trouble.
Well, because he owned a lot of police departments. He bailed out a lot of his girls or people who were participating in it. He would just pick up the phone and, people would be released. He kept a lower profile than Trump did in all of this, but they definitely partnered together in a lot of the activities. They hosted parties at Mar-a-Lago that were private parties, that the people who helped prepare the parties just say, I'm never going to do that again. But they would never go public with what was going on, ever. And they would just say, I'm not ever going to participate in that again. They knew what was going on. So, there's a lot of speculation about a lot of things, and everyone said, well, who just lets their little girls go running off with the Epstein and Trump? And here's the secret that they had. Epstein worked with Les Wexner, and Les Wexner was the founder of Victoria's Secrets and the founder of Bath Body Works, and Limited as well. So so a lot of modeling goes on there. And then Victoria's Secrets went into teens, right? They had the pink line and had the teens. But what was interesting in all of this is a lot of people don't know is Les Wexner, for whatever reason, assigned complete power of attorney of all his businesses and his personal life to Jeffrey Epstein. And that's where Jeffrey got
you asked what, so Palm Beach, or where this whole thing took place, has the rich side and kind of the poor, kind of white.
So it has the extreme poor side.
Yeah.
Right. And so what they did was,
if you're a cute girl and you have all these opportunities, like at the time, Epstein was an upstanding, considered a super citizen. Trump
used his money.
Yeah, and it's like if you could move into that world and get a good job at like Mar-a-Lago on, at any of Epstein's properties, get paid $50 an hour, like it seemed like a good
it paid
deal.
$200 an hour to the girls who were willing to be groomed, and they got cash. And so they got it was about $200 for two hours, so $100 an hour. My book is fairly simple because it just connects you to the links, and then the timeline of all of the events and who, as much as who as we can. We have 3 books, and the other one is a list of all the names that are involved, and it's still continuing. But the problem that you had is you had Les Wexner's name being used. And that's where Epstein built his credibility. And so him and Trump would go around and tell girls, hey, we're Victoria's Secrets, right? We and Les Wexner is on deed, gave Epstein his multi-million-dollar townhome in Manhattan. Just gave it to him. And they built homes next to each other all across the United States. Okay. And Les Wexner, the minute Epstein got busted in 2008, started backpedaling and go, I have no idea what he's doing. But before Epstein went to jail and got sentenced to go to jail for prostitution with a minor, which he should have gone to prison. Mm-hmm. Epstein put $46 million into Wexner's charity, because he had Wexner and his wife set up a charity, and that's how they transacted money. So 10 years later, Wexner comes back and goes, I lost $46 million. I have no idea where it went. And he tried to file a report that Epstein stole it. Epstein put it in his bank account.
Confusion is what the people who are trying, there are now said to be 5 million Epstein documents in the Epstein files. That's
a lot. That's why I didn't.
But it's also a legal strategy called papering the opposition. That when you ask for discovery, they send 2 truckloads of documents over to you, a lot of trivia, a lot of nonsense, and they hope you can't find the important documents out of the millions they've sent you. And that is what is going to happen eventually with the Epstein files.
No, so what I did is I had court cases, and I've been blessed over the years to know how to read through them and look for them. But what I did do, because I was recovering from heart surgery, so I couldn't do anything else. I had to keep my arms closed, and I just sat and read. I don't like TV much, so I just sat and read because. And it was just because I decided to do a background check for someone. And then it just became curious to me because this is a hot topic. And I asked myself the same question. Why isn't anyone reading these court records? And when you dive into certain court records and you look at, you need to learn to skip a lot of stuff like subpoenas, but look at the cover page, who's being subpoenaed and why. But But then I got into court records that were filed on top of file, on top of file, on top of file for one section. And then near the end, they were being redacted on the top layer, like the new layers, right? There was redactions. But I said, I wonder if those redactions exist on the same files going back, going deep. So I would go look at the older filings, and I would find that they screwed up and didn't redact all of them. So I found names. I found, they were told that they couldn't mention one of the men's names, and they had to call him the big hotel guy. So that, and when you watch the depositions and listen to him, or if you read through them, they had to call him by big hotel guy. Well, immediately I thought that was Trump, and it wasn't. Okay. So I finally dug deep enough and just kept digging deeper and deeper that I found it. But it was just because I had nothing else to do for months.
Well, it's going to take a long time to put it all.
But so you're talking millions of records. You can't even.
It's time to wrap up and everything like that.
We're running a rerun, so we can keep talking about this.
You can, but I when I drink coffee, at some point I have to.
Oh yeah, you got to go. So we're going to end the show.
Yeah, we're getting to end the show. I was just going to say
that
sorry
about that.
I don't know when I'm going to do the show, but I'd like to invite people.
Okay.
Apparently, the StreamYard show is going to be all totally reusable. So I just got that announcement that all studios are now reusable and everything. And then I just got a notice from Venezuela that the acting president says that she's tired of, that she's had enough of U.S. orders. So maybe she's going to put herself in the crossfires and everything. But she says she's had enough of Trump and his orders and everything.
Well, there have been a lot of people and leaders in other countries that have finally said, until the United States gets another U.S. president, we don't want to do business with you anymore. Yeah, so my opportunities globally, because I work universal and globally, have become, I don't even want to travel globally to the places I have been going, because I feel like I'm putting my life in danger. So, and I never felt that way before. Heck, I've been to Colombia, South America, never felt scared. So, but I just feel like as an American, we're going to become targets.
Definitely with Venezuela, because she's trying to work a delicate balance between her Maduro loyalists, who is sitting in our jail, and trying to appease Trump and everything. But apparently she was talking to some oil workers in Venezuela, and basically she said that she's had enough of Trump's demands on her and everything like that. So it sounds like she's trying to step up and all along those lines. So it'll be interesting to see if she's the next targeted one by Trump and everything like that. Because maybe he's going to try to grab her.
Well, we've already been attacking Venezuela, right? We have attacked them. We have illegally bombed their boats without any justification or certification of who or what was on the boat. And all of these lies coming out that the fentanyl deaths have lessened. They have been lessening since 2002, not because of that, but because we've been getting Narcan, the anti-drug, to overdoses out there. But the fentanyl that was killing the Americans is homemade fentanyl. Yeah. It is man-made synthetic fentanyl that, if not cut properly, will kill you. And what was happening was the drug dealers, and I was at a police department one day when they had a whole, like, right up I-40, a string of deaths from Florida all the way up. And they weren't putting out a PSA of, hey, people, don't use the fentanyl being sold right now. But what they were doing too was mixing it with other drugs that they were selling. And again, it wasn't cut properly, because from what I was told, was a synthetic drug. And people, unless you're getting the medications and drugs from a controlled environment like your doctor and a pharma, don't take it. Don't take drugs being sold on the street. I'm sorry, but that's just a suicide note.
That's totally suicide.
But Sharif, it's great to see you.
On that note, we're getting to wrap up and everything along those lines. And I know other shows, including Timeshare, coming up.
But we can talk after this. We just need to let David Walker's show is running live right now. Because of the storms. He's up in a much deeper snowed in area. Yeah. And needs to shovel out snow today. But I think we're going to be hit all week with a little bit of the storm. And then people be careful, because It looks like everything's melting, but in the shady areas of the streets, it turns into what we call black ice.
Black
And
ice,
that
which
is
is very
very
dangerous.
dangerous because it may melt and melt and melt everywhere. And then you're driving on dry. And then all of a sudden it ran into the shady area and
Mhm.
it didn't melt and it didn't dry up and it refroze and you're going to skid out. It's just, it happens all the time. Nobody's tires can drive on that. And so just be careful, be alert, turn off your radio, turn off your phone, put your phone down, and just pay attention to the road. So.
Yep. No doubt. On that note, we're getting ready to wrap up, and here's our outro.